Hello and welcome to the MSP Voice webinar series. Today I am pleased to be joined by Shaheen Kazi with NETGEAR. NETGEAR has a whole line of products, Insight Pro for cloud-based network management. So I'm excited to hear more about their solutions. As we go through, if you have questions, please utilize the Q&A. And a recording of this will be available within a week, available on msp.com, mspvoice.com. So definitely check there. So again, Shaheen, Director of Product Management for the Insight line. So I don't think we could have anybody better here talking about it than you. Welcome, Shaheen.
Thank you so much, Doug, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I am very pleased to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about my product, NETGEAR Insight, and in particular, Insight Pro, which I think is a very relevant solution for MSPs in general. So let's get started. And also, it's very interactive, so feel free to stop me with questions, etc. And with that, let's get started. So here's the situation: is that while network management and all kinds of networking tools have been available for the last couple of decades, they have primarily been in the domain of larger businesses, larger organizations, and enterprises. And obviously for the vendors who build these solutions, it makes sense because they are able to charge enterprises a lot of money. Unfortunately, in the SMB sector, that affordability is not there, which I know all of you are already familiar with that challenge. And typically what many vendors have done is have had solutions, basically existing solutions that they've dumbed down quite a bit and priced down a little bit, and then labeled them as SMB solutions. Yet when you see the needs of SMB and how they have evolved over the last decade, you will see that things have changed quite significantly. While they have grown in complexity as a result of everything that we already are very familiar with, mobile devices and BYOD, where employees are coming in and basically want to use their own devices for work. And two is particularly relevant for small businesses because many of them are retail businesses or are service businesses. And in both those instances, they have direct contact with their customers who very often are waiting in the waiting rooms that they provide while they provide the service to them. Take the example of an auto shop or a hairdresser or a nail salon or even a small cafe. In all of those instances, you basically have a place where your customers wait while they receive the service that the small business provides. And while they wait, they expect free Wi-Fi. The reason I bring all of these up is because networking in small business 10 years or 15 years ago is very different from networking in small business today. It is a lot more complex. There are way more devices. Small businesses also need uptime because not having connectivity, even for a few minutes, even if they are a micro business, costs that business, which means that a reliable network with full connectivity is very key. And then, you need to isolate when you have different groups of users using your wireless network. It means that you've got to have isolated networks. You've got to have ways to set those networks up. You've got to have ways to set up VLANs, etc. And security is another key component, is that even the smallest of businesses now have to address security. So all of these mean that the small business network is complex and needs IT resources. It is different from that of enterprises, but it needs IT resources to manage their network nonetheless. And it turns out that over 80% of small businesses don't actually have any in-house IT staff. And so they're lacking the skill that is needed to serve up the kind of network connectivity and reliable networks that is needed by small businesses. And we haven't even begun the era of IoT, which will hit small businesses over this decade. So all of this means that there's a great opportunity for managed service providers who basically fill that gap. They fill the gap that small businesses have, which is in the way of IT resources. And it's a tremendous opportunity for MSPs to come in and provide services. And from the MSP side, many MSPs, began as VARs, probably going back a decade or more. And the reality is that being a reseller of hardware today is very challenging in the face of competitors, the online retailers in particular, who simply, it's very hard to compete with the kind of prices that they can sell product at. But with the MSP model, it's a very different game, and it's a way that resellers can basically migrate into the services, basically change the game and change the dynamics entirely, whereby they are selling a complete service and addressing the specific needs of small business. Now, one aspect, and I know you guys are very familiar with this concept, but just to kind of set the stage, with the MSP model, a key component of it is the recurring revenue, because services by definition are require a recurring revenue model where payments are made by the end customer at some sort of periodic cadence, whether it's monthly or it's annual. You can even have longer term contracts, for 3 years or 5 years. But regardless of what that cadence and what that time interval is, the idea is that the end customer is going to depend on you for a comprehensive service, which may or may not include devices. And it is where basically they're expecting you to deliver that full service for the length of the contract term. And what this brings is an enormous amount of predictability that was not there in the earlier reseller model. And it's very important because it's a way that MSPs can grow their business and really focus on building their business because they have this predictability in terms of what they need to deliver for the customer base that they already have. A lot of this predictability requires some kind of technology solution that needs to provide access to those customers' networks 24/7 from anywhere, absolutely key, and also provides a set of tools, including a single pane of glass view across all those customers, even if some of those customers are multi-site. So basically you have a view into all of your customers, and then you can drill down into a particular customer, into their single network or into multiple networks that they may have, and to be able to conduct functions on that network and to be able to do it from anywhere. Those are key components to how you grow out the MSP business and the service model. And that is exactly where my product, NETGEAR Insight, comes in, is that it has been built from the ground up to address the specific needs of small and mid-sized business. And unlike other vendors, NETGEAR doesn't really focus on enterprise. So we have a large residential consumer line, and then we have our SMB line. So the way we approach the product is a little bit different. We built it by first understanding the specific needs of MSPs who service small business and the small businesses themselves. And we built Insight to meet those needs. Insight comes both on the web portal or the web platform and the mobile platform, available on iOS and Android. And It is a complete ecosystem in that what I mean is that it manages a set of devices that looks at the comprehensive needs of SMB and provides hardware devices to meet them across all of the different components. And so basically Insight brings full visibility and control because it can access all those devices from anywhere.
Yeah, no, Sheen, I'm imagining that you have basically there has to be Insight enabled, right? Like if you buy a NETGEAR router for the home, it may or may not be Insight enabled, but if you buy it for like your small business line, it's probably already there. You just have to sign up for the service. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And thanks
Okay.
for that question, Doug. So on the residential, it's interesting because Insight will do a few very small things for
Okay.
the residential line. For example, you can download the Insight app for free. We actually make it available for free for up to 2 devices, and people
Okay.
can use the app for doing simple things like claiming the device and registering the device with NETGEAR.
Hmm.
Um, but if the device is Insight enabled, as you rightly pointed out, Doug, in that case, and these are all the SMB products, they're not across all of the NETGEAR SMB line of products.
Okay.
But what I will say is that we are increasing the number of devices under Insight management with each new release. So we've grown just the portfolio of devices significantly, and they cover the full gambit from routing to switching to basically all the wireless access points and storage as well.
Cool.
And so for these devices that are Insight managed, as we call them, or Insight devices, Insight does a whole host of things from, obviously the initial onboarding, claiming, and registering to detailed configurations and setup of the device as well as the network to ongoing monitoring, ongoing management, firmware updates, troubleshooting, the whole gambit. And what makes this whole ecosystem unique is that these devices come Insight ready straight out of the box. And what I mean is that you don't need to do any kind of setup. You just open up the device box, you download the Insight app, you literally can scan the barcode or the QR code of the device, and basically Insight adds that device to your network. And then what's really great is that you can follow the setup after you've done that. So for example, if you make a purchase for several of your customers, they come, the devices are shipped to you, you just basically barcode or QR code scan those devices and then ship them to the location of your end customers, where a non-technical user can also, with some guidance from you, actually physically set up the device, plug them in, etc. And you will have visibility into those devices once they are set up. You can then proceed to configure them at your leisure because they've already been added to your network.
That's
And
useful
some other
I was just gonna say that's useful for like remote offices for like, if you have a customer with multiple locations and maybe 1 or 2 are remote, right? You can still receive it in, like you said, get it scanned and then send it out to them remotely, have them plug it in and get them up and running without having to do a site visit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have remote offices, it's perfect. If you are an MSP and you have many customers and you may want to abbreviate the amount of time you spend on site. In
Hmm.
all of those instances, this comes in very handy.
Cool.
And there is no setup in the way of like this. You don't have to set up an appliance or have any kind of like keys or dongles or any kind of client that you've got to configure and set up. Insight is ready. You download the app and you basically go to the Insight site. In the case of Insight Pro that I'm speaking about specifically today, you do need to purchase the licenses from your distributor because we've made Insight Pro a channel play. So basically the idea is that Insight Pro is a professional solution. It is targeted at professional MSPs and VARs who mainly make their purchases from distribution. And so we've enabled it to be kind of exclusive through the channel. And basically, once you create your account, you're good to go, and you're off to the races. So another very key aspect of Insight, and in particular Insight Pro, is that we have priced it right. I talked earlier about how we built Insight for the SMB environment, really kind of addressing the specific needs of what those networks and managing those networks need. But additionally, cost is a very important component for small business networks and for small businesses in general, and for MSPs who manage those small business networks, because you have to have enough headroom to really build out your business. If you are already using a cloud-based management solution that is very expensive, it means that one, you're going to reduce the market that can actually afford your solution and your services within small business. And two is that it means that it is actually going to kind of like crunch your own margins. But when you have a solution like Insight Pro, which is priced specifically to address those challenges, and what we've done is we've priced it so the ceiling is $14.99 per year per device, and of course it has volume discount, which is both based on the packs that you buy, so how many device subscriptions you purchase, but also in the contract term. So the longer the term, the more discount you get. So basically, if you're purchasing, like 100 pack over 5 years, that price is actually just under $10 per year per device. And when I talk about this, most people think, do I mean per month? And I want to clarify, no, these prices are per year per device. So with that said, just to talk a little more about, some of the benefits that come with Insight Pro, obviously you are able to do end-to-end service delivery, everything from the initial registration to the setup configs, remote monitoring, firmware management, support escalation. We've also built in a number of capabilities into Insight Pro, some key ones being the ability to manage multiple customers in a single account, which means we have a multi-tenant solution. So you can actually have within a single Insight Pro account many different customer accounts that you're managing, and some of those customers, some or all of those customers could have multiple sites. So in all of those instances, you can basically drill down to the lowest level, down to a particular location or site and a particular device within that site. We've also added multiple user roles with rights management. So the idea is that if you're an MSP and you have a growing services business and maybe you've got a small team of employees who work with you, you can designate and assign and basically divide up the workload amongst your team and be able to assign rights accordingly. And then, as I've talked about, basically leverage Insight's low TCO to address the market that is really not affordable to other solutions that are in the marketplace. And that is a very, very significant market. So if you look at the SMB market, SMB is a huge, huge market. They are in excess of 4 million SMBs in the United States alone, because the segments within the SMB are significant. The largest segment is actually the sub 10 employee segment, which runs in excess of 3 million, because that's actually the largest segment. And many of those really tiny kind of micro businesses are priced out of the solutions that are in the marketplace today. So Insight provides an opportunity to address that marketplace and to build a profitable business for yourself, because those tiny micro businesses, obviously you cannot have the same level of touch that you can have for larger businesses, and you need tools to help centralize the management of those, and that's exactly where Insight Pro comes in.
Yeah, so
So here's,
thinking of, I
go
was just
ahead.
going to say, from you were talking about total cost of ownership, right? So a very small business, they may have what, 3 to 4 Insight devices that you'll be managing.
Hmm.
So, that's $60 a year for 4 devices that you would manage, and that's all the MSP has to pay to you guys is $60 a year for the
Or
licensing,
less.
but then or less. But then
Yeah.
they can then charge the customer, $15 a month or whatever they want to charge to say, hey, we're managing your network and we're doing it remotely, but if you have an issue, we can take care of it here.
That is exactly correct, is
Yeah.
that when you look at the MSP model, very typical at $15 a month, you have an extremely aggressively priced model because in many cases, we are seeing solutions in the marketplace. And of course, they do include the price of the hardware, but
Hmm.
they are around between $30 and $40 per device per month. Um, and there are many other limitations. Many of them are part of an ISP service. So they require you to be locked into their ISP services and contractually locked into a contract
Hmm.
over some number of years. And there are usually other constraints as well put on. But with Insight, you don't have any of those constraints, and the price point is exactly as you pointed out. There's so much room, so much headroom to build a profitable business, even if you are very competitively priced for for the end customers, the actual small business customers. So with that said, I wanted to just touch a little bit on multi-tenancy. So obviously multi-tenancy, our Insight Pro is multi-tenancy, which means that you can have multiple customers. And I brought that up earlier. A key aspect of that is that we've actually got a role for the end business user as well. So they can log in to Insight, but what they are going to see is a very limited view. And of course, it's partitioned for them to only see their business. But additionally, as I mentioned, if you have employees and you're all part of a team and you've kind of divided the workload, you can assign certain employees to certain customers and limit their access to only those customer views. You may have situations where you have your end customers actually compete with each other. So that's multi-tenancy provides the partitioning, the data and screen partitioning. That's important in all of those scenarios. And of course, at the same time, you still get that centralized single pane of glass view, which is so important when you are managing many different networks. So Insight provides all of that. And as you can see from the diagram, significant difference between the way that we have architected Insight versus how competitors have typically architected their solutions. Insight has many different hierarchies, which is what allows you to get down to the device at a particular location while still having a single account that is managing many customer networks, even if they have multi-sites.
Okay, so we do have a question just to clear up any confusion in terms of the pricing, that $14.99 or less. That's for a NETGEAR Insight device, correct?
No, no.
Oh,
That is the price for the Insight Pro management solution. So
okay.
Insight Pro is a cloud-based solution.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's per Insight device connected into the Insight Pro.
That's correct. So
Okay.
basically, that is the price of managing that device, the price per year for managing an Insight device.
Okay. And then another question is, what about, can you then see like computers and cell phones and things on the network?
Yes, so you can see clients and have some visibility into what you can see,
Hmm.
clients that are hanging off that network. And including, for example, if your customers have free Wi-Fi for their users, and you want to be able to see and to show your customer, the small business, the usage of their free Wi-Fi by their customers, you
Yeah.
can see those clients hanging off the APs managed by Insight.
Okay. Now, does Insight Pro allow you to manage computers or connected devices? Or is it
No,
just you have visibility, you can see them, but you can't really drill down and they're not considered an Insight device?
that's exactly right, and great
Okay.
question. So Insight does not manage endpoints. It provides some visibility into clients that are hanging off the network, but what Insight is a network management tool. So it is not an endpoint management tool. Hopefully that clarifies some of the questions.
Yeah,
And
I hope so. So that
okay,
was one of the audience questions. So I just wanted to make sure we got it
yeah,
cleared
no,
up.
that's great. That's great. Great questions. So, and certainly we can discuss additional questions as we go on. But just to kind of move things forward, so we received a couple of great accolades just over the last 6 months. The Tully Group report was done in fall, actually Q4 of 2018, and they basically gave us, they compared us to Ubiquity Unify and also to Zeitzel Nebula. And basically we came out on top. And in particular, we got very high marks for how we've architected the solution, for our flexibility and simplicity, for our multi-role capability, and also that we have we have both the mobile app and the cloud portal. And our mobile app is not a lightweight companion app as with many other vendor solutions. Our mobile app is very complete. So you can actually even configure devices on your mobile app. And certainly you can address, issues, firmware updates, even do some troubleshooting. You can reboot devices, etc., all through the mobile app. So it's a very complete solution, the mobile app, and a real partner to the mobile to the web portal, which has, of course, all of the capabilities in the mobile app and several additional capabilities as well. Just last month, we received a great review from Miercom, which is another third party. The first one was Tully Group, and this one is Miercom, which is another third party network analyst, third party testing solution provider. And basically, this report is really amazing because they get into an amazing level of depth. And they basically gave us just a glowing report of, this time we were compared with Cisco Meraki and Ubiquity Unify, and even in that context we came out ahead on many fronts. Obviously the best value, but also for our multi-tenancy, the fact that we accommodate multi-tenancy, multi-location in that framework. The fact that we have real time, because it's all cloud-based, so it's all real time, and you have access from anywhere that there is internet through the web portal as well as the mobile app. TCO, of course, we cannot be beat, and the centralized dashboard, so much of it. And so I would really highly recommend that you guys read the Miercom and the Tully report, because it tells you so many details. Even in the licensing model, the way that we've built in so much flexibility. For example, if you're an MSP with many customers, we allow you to share. As I mentioned, you can buy larger packs of subscriptions. And we have these packs going from, 5-pack, 10-pack, 25-pack, 50-pack, and 100-pack. So if you're an MSP with many customers and many devices that you manage, it would probably make sense for you to buy the 100-pack. Well, guess what? You can share those subscriptions in that 100-pack or 50-pack or 25-pack or 10-pack across your customer base, which means that you are going to optimize for the use of your subscriptions and absolutely kind of maximize the use of them. So for all of those reasons, we got a glowing report from Miercom and from Tully. And, it might make sense to send links to both these reports so we can, in the follow-up that you'll be receiving from Doug. So with that said, unless there are some specific questions right away, we can move very quickly into a demo mode. I'm just going to pause here for a second while I get set up and see if there are any immediate questions.
Nope, we've addressed the questions that come in so far. So I think everybody's looking forward to seeing it in action.
All right. So basically, when you log into the Insight Pro account, and before I even get going, I want to point out that this is a very small demo environment that we have here in San Jose, and which is why you're only seeing a handful of organizations. By organizations, we mean, customers. So basically, this is Insight Pro, which means that the typical user of Insight Pro is an MSP or a centralized IT department of a mid-sized company that has many, many sites. So typical examples of those are franchise or some kind of retail operation that has many small sites, so highly distributed, and where there's a centralized IT that is essentially functioning like an MSP, where they are providing IT services across all those many sites. So in both of those instances, when you log in, you're going to get a view where you are first seeing a tile view across a tile or a list view, because you can certainly configure the view as you like, but basically across all of your organization. So this is a top level hierarchy where you're seeing a kind of single tile for each of your organizations. And what you can then do is drill into any of those organizations. In this case, all of these companies are, of course, fictitious because, as I mentioned, this is a demo environment. So I go into Bay Coffee, and it turns out they have multiple locations. They have 4 locations, and I can see the status across those locations. I can actually see at a high level the number of devices, alerts, even clients, etc. If those devices are down, you can actually see color coding that will indicate that. And then you can also see who on my team are the managers of those of this particular location, and if there are any issues concerning that. Now I can drill further, excuse me, not particular location, but particular customer organization. I can drill further into a particular network location for Bay Coffee. And if I just click on that, I'm going specifically into SF7 Hills Cafe. And now I get into a dashboard that tells me the overall health of that network location. So I can see at a high level the devices that are there. So what are the key properties? And again, this is a demo environment, so it is going to be very, very skimpy. But obviously there is no reason, no technical limit why these numbers would not be higher. In fact, if you saw a real production environment of an MSP, you would see that these numbers would be many, many times what you're seeing here. But basically, it's going to give you a quick view into all of the devices and the key properties across those devices. You're going to get a system health, where if everything is green as it is here, you will see that. And if something needs attention, it will also give you warning lights, an orange and a red. Red if your network is or a device is down and needs to be addressed. Then, excuse me, below you see wireless clients. Now, of course, in this case, we've only got one client of that demo environment. And you can see port utilization on your switches. So if you have multiple switches, you can actually see them. You can get information on connected ports. and disabled ports, available ports, also lagged ports. So you basically get kind of a high level view into all of the, you can also have a high level view into any storage devices, Insight storage devices that you may have and what kind of storage is available. You can get a view into wireless data consumption. This would be for specific APs, and then you can see it across the actual different access points that you have. You can also, if you have PoE switches deployed, you can see power usage for those PoE switches. And then you can see access point neighborhoods. So if you've got a number of APs deployed, you really want to be able to see how those access points are within the neighborhood. And this provides you with that view. And if there are any rogue or unknown access points, you can get a very immediate glimpse into that. We also have the Insight firewall and router, and with that router, we have the router supports VPN, the creation of both site-to-site VPN and of remote VPN users. And with there's a unit of what we call the VPN group that allows you to connect up to 3 sites and up to 30 VPN remote users in one VPN group. Of course, you can have multiple VPN groups. And basically, this gives you a quick view into that as well, and into the router traffic. You can customize these tiles as you like. And there are, I'm not going to get into it in detail, but basically, you are able to customize, select the widgets. We call each of these tiles a widget. Select the widgets that you want. There's a whole list of them, and then how you want those spread out so that you are basically have a very customized view that suits you. Now, if you look on top, you can see that I'm in the customer called Bay Coffee, and specifically within the SF7 Hills Cafe location. And I can also go into Insight Services, which I'm not going to cover this time because there's a lot to cover. But I also have the Manage. And when I click on Manage, I can see a bunch of things, including the creation of managers, where I can actually create new managers or assign rights to managers I've already created. I can create reports. So in Insight, you have the ability to create custom reports for each of for your own consumption as an MSP or an IT manager, but also for other audiences. So for instance, if I'm an MSP and I want to provide a report on a monthly basis to my end user, the end small business, I can actually custom create that report for the views that I want to share with them, and basically have Insight automate that so that Insight will generate that report on whatever the cadence is. Say that the cadence is monthly, it would generate that report monthly and email it to your customer. And in fact, you can even brand it with your logo so that it's branded for you.
So I have a quick question.
Oh, please.
I have a quick question now. The idea of multi-site and all that type of stuff. So right now you're in the Seven Hills Cafe location. If you go manage and reports, is it all going to be relevant to that location, or would it be for all of Bay Coffee? Or when you click on that, it actually takes you into another menu where you select what you want to choose?
So awesome question. Really great question, because I was going to actually cover that we have a report. No, it's great because your timing is just exquisite. So we have a wizard basically to create reports. And so there's a lot of, and in fact, let me take this opportunity to answer that question, actually showing it to you. So you can see that we've got some reports that are already created and scheduled, and these are the ones that would automatically be generated and sent out. But if I was to create a new report, we go into the reports wizard, and as you can see that you are going to go through kind of a step-by-step process, and you only do this once. You basically save it as a report. set up the cadence that you want and who the audience of the report is, and then you're done. And basically here you can name the report, obviously, but you can also determine the kind of report you have. Troubleshooting reports are a near real-time report because obviously the objective of a troubleshooting report is to diagnose what's going on in your network or in the network that you are addressing at a particular time. So it only goes back 2 hours and shows you the state of things over the 2-hour period. But you can, if you choose to not do a troubleshooting report, if you do a custom report, that would not be a troubleshooting report. These reports would be going back, typically 30 days is what we do on Insight Pro, and it'll give you a history over the 30 days. You can also choose to do one for a 7-day timeline or even shorter. Basically, you've got, you can even do it at 24 hours, so it's all up to you. And then you put in the email addresses of the people that you want. And you can, as I said, you have the ability to brand, and you can set that up. So you're doing this at the organization level to answer your question. The reports can be done, but you can then fine tune and filter if you want to get down to a specific location.
Okay,
otherwise, you're going to be doing this at the organization level. And if I was to actually kind of create one, and I may just very quickly just to kind of show you how this would work. And if I'm not going to go into all the details, but I just want to show you a few things. You can now see that I am at the organization level, and it is showing me all of the organizations that I have. If I was to select Bay Coffee, it immediately shows me the locations under that organization. And then I can then select the locations that I want. And, if I was to just select all of them, it would, all I do is click once, click next. Oh yes, I have to add a name. I forget that.
So essentially, if when you went there and did a filter name, so if you went back to one of your other reports that was already existing, could you then select other organizations? So you could basically create the report once, but then assign it to have different organizations, or?
Yes. So you
Okay.
can create if you want to just create a generic template. For instance, you're an MSP and you want to create a monthly report for the end business customer. You can create a generic template and apply it to all customer location, to also all customers and all
Okay.
locations.
Okay.
So you can do that, or you can choose to kind of make it more fine grained. So it's
Yeah.
entirely up to you. You can also
Okay.
have much more granular reports. One quick point that I forgot to mention is that we also have a kind of an audit or change log report. This is obviously something that would be for internal consumption, and this is a detailed report that tells you, every change and you can again select it by network and by organization. And what it's going to give you is, all the changes, every change that was made and who it was made by and when it was made by. So it gives you a full log of exactly what happened. And it's very important in the case of troubleshooting, particularly when you have a number of team members and you need to know what was done so that you can troubleshoot.
Yeah, change
So
logs are important.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm not going to go into this in any great detail because we
Yeah.
are already at 1:45 and there's so much more to show you. But basically, the idea is that you have a whole set of parameters here. As you can see, you can select, for example, you can select from any of these parameters that are available. In fact, there's even a tiny little window that shows you exactly what that widget, how it's going to look on the report. And you can select from it inventory, and then, as I mentioned, change log as well. So without getting into any detail, I'm going to just kind of go back into the organization, and because I want to talk just briefly about this next layer of capabilities. So the top layer is really kind of high level stuff. As I said, it's about creating users. As an admin to Insight Pro, you would have the ability to create users. As I mentioned, you can create managers. These would be other team members and assign them access privileges, but you can also assign an owner, and by owner we mean the end customer, so the end business owner, and they would have a limited view, as I said, and it's a passive role just by default. And then, of course, you can do many other things like purchase, additional device credits, etc., or from kind of the high-level management view. But when you actually get into a particular network, that's where this second row becomes very important. And this is where the meat of the matter, where you're actually managing the devices, setting them up, and setting up the networks, etc. So here you can see routers, wireless, wired, storage, firmware management, devices, clients, and troubleshoot is kind of the top level view. And if I was to go into so for example, I can also choose to look at what devices I have within this customer organization. It's going to tell me the devices. Again, keep in mind that this is a demo environment, so it's very skimpy, but basically what the devices are and the locations of those devices. And I can, in fact, right from here, go into edit mode. And it's going to take me into a device-specific screen where it's going to give me additional detail on the devices, and also on the left hand in this sidebar, you can see all of the different config settings that I've got, as well as stats that I have across each of these different categories. Now, this is at the device level. I can also choose to go into wireless, and this is at the wireless network level now. So at the wireless network level, I'm going to see, again, stats relevant to that network level. That's one hierarchy level above the device level. And I can see all the devices that I have here. In this case, of course, I've only got one device, one access point at this demo location, and just one client. But I can also go into settings, and this is where I would set up the wireless network itself. So for instance, I wanted to add a new Wi-Fi, and I would actually go in and I would add a new SSID. I would set up my broadcast, my band, set up my band steering, some degree of security setting, password setting. And if I was to actually create this, you would see that many more things come up. I want to do this very, very quickly because my purpose is simply to show. And also you can see that you can add this to a VLAN. So if you've on your switch, if you've already created a VLAN, you can make the association here. And when I go into the wired settings, I'll actually show you how we have a VLAN wizard that makes all of this very easy. But for the purpose of, anyway, I'm not going to go into this, and because I will need a few more minutes. I've got a lot more to cover, so I'm going to exit out of this. But what I wanted to say was that you can also do a captive portal right in the settings of your Wi-Fi. So, for example, if your customer is, a hairdressing salon or an auto garage shop, and they want to have, to use the captive portal and to actually have a EULA of sorts, and also use the captive portal for marketing purposes, you can certainly enable that. That's built into Insight. Now I'm going to go into the wired settings because we want to also take a quick look. Again, the same thing. So now I am at the SF Seven Hills Cafe wired settings within this particular location, and I can see the network settings on the wired side. I can also go into settings particularly, and this is where I would configure the settings on the wired side. And as you can see here, I've got the VLAN network setup. That's the wizard I spoke about. We also have the group port configuration wizard, which allows you to basically set up multiple ports across all the switches that you have in a single go, which makes life very easy. And then, obviously you can fine tune lags, spanning tree, PoE schedules. We've got a scheduler where you can set up PoEs at a very granular level, which comes in very handy when you have an environment where, for example, you want to turn off the PoE, after hours, maybe 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that would automatically turn off your access points and your Wi-Fi, because you don't want during the after hours, you may not want people to be using your Wi-Fi. Or you could have any number of other reasons where you want to have a scheduled PoE, and that feature is built into Insight. And then radius configuration as well. Very quickly, I'm just going to go in and show you the wizard that we have for the VLAN setup. And you can see that it's going to take you through all of the steps in a sequence, because this is one of the most complex things that, as most of you already know, the setup of VLANs is probably the most complex network setup. And we make it easy by providing you with a step-by-step wizard, so that typical errors are when you miss a step, and this makes sure that you don't miss a step by taking you through that wizard. So, and then kind of going back, I am just going to go back into that view just to kind of cover a few additional components as well. So firmware management, you can schedule firmware, so you can basically allow Insight to automatically make the updates based on a granular schedule that you set up. And then Insight takes care of doing that. For example, you may want to have your firmware, on a Saturday night at between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. You set up the schedule, and Insight does the rest. It'll also tell you, if your devices are all current, and if they're not, it will give you a heads up on that. Finally, I'm going to go into the router. And as I mentioned, the whole concept of the VPN group, you can set up that VPN group right through Insight, and it makes it dead easy, where you're literally creating a new VPN group. Again, a pretty complex networking task, and you can do this literally in 3 clicks. So in the interest of time, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions, I'm going to actually stop the demo. Of course, we could, go on for another hour showing you all of the different features of Insight. But at a high level, just to kind of wrap things up, the idea of Insight Pro is that it is a comprehensive solution that gives you remote access into your customers' networks, whether you have a single network or many customers across many customer networks, and it is able to give you the single pane of glass for a high-level view, with the ability to drill down into every detail on the device, and be able to do this comprehensively across all aspects of setup, configuration, ongoing management, troubleshooting, etc. So with that, I will stop and open up for questions.
Great. Yeah, we had a question about basically about a very specific switch, the JGS 524PE, I think. But apparently anything with is it GC at the beginning of the code is an Insight switch, or?
Yes. So anything with a GC is an Insight switch, and just a little kind of heads up is that we are going to be expanding that portfolio to include some of the GS switches as well. You'll hear more about this over the next month to 6 weeks.
Okay, great. So yeah, that was one of the questions that we had. So basically, if people are wondering, hey, is this device Insight enabled? If they look for that code today, and then in the future, we'll be expanding it out. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, with every major release, we are expanding the devices under Insight Management. So we have, already we have a whole family of switches, from 8 ports all the way up to 52-port switches, PoE and non-PoE. We also have a range of access points. Um, the WAC 510, the WAC 505, the WAC 540. Insight also supports and manages the Orbi Pro, and then Insight supports our router and a whole family of, and then we're adding additional routers as well,
Hmm.
and then a whole family of storage devices.
Okay, great. And then someone asked too, for Insight Pro, is there a try before you buy? Is there a trial?
So for Insight Pro, simply because of the logistics of Insight Pro being sold through distribution, um, it makes it very hard to do a trial when you go through distribution, because we don't actually manage that purchase flow. But
Hmm.
if your users, send me an email and we can look into how we can make a trial possible.
Okay, great,
And I've actually got my email right there.
awesome. So, oh, and that was your last slide. Anyone who's still on, we have quite a few on here. If you have any other questions, I'm sure Shaheen will stick around for a few more minutes here, and we'll get those answered for you. I know we've had some questions
Absolutely.
come in. I think we've addressed them all, but anything else? Now, just, we covered this earlier in terms of the licensing. It's $14.99 or less per year to manage a device that is Insight enabled. Um, Now, if you're outfitting a small office, right? Let's say you've got a router, a switch, and 2 access points. Hardware wise, what's the MSRP on that? Do you know that off the top of your head? If you don't worry about it. But I was just kind of wondering, because that's kind of, there is the upfront cost if you have to purchase the hardware, and then there's the yearly to manage it.
Yeah, so the hardware price, of course, I mean, there's a huge portfolio of devices, so there's
Yeah.
a wide range,
Okay.
and our access points, for example, typically start sub $100 and
Hmm.
then go, I would say they're sub 100 and go up to about 150.
Okay.
We do have higher end access points that are a little bit more expensive than that, but there's a wide range.
Hmm.
Switches typically start, around like 130 and go up from there. In fact, we even have some small switches that are sub 100. So,
But
I
but you're not
mean,
going to break the bank,
it's
I guess is what, for a small
no,
business,
no.
you're not
So,
going to have to lay
so
out
basically,
$10,000 for their networking equipment.
no, not at all, not even
Okay,
remotely.
yeah.
And basically, that's the beauty of Netgear, right? That you have a wide range, and
Hmm.
also just as a price comparison. I mean, if you're comparing us to other device vendors that are out there, we are particularly the ones that focus primarily on enterprise. I mean, those guys are priced way higher,
Yeah.
as you know, and so yeah.
Okay. And then do any of your distributors, do any of them offer financing for the hardware? Or that you know of?
Hmm. Hmm. You know, it varies. There are
Okay.
some who do, and there's a lot of variance. Some of them
Yeah.
do, some of them, do 30 days, some of them have like better financing options. So
Hmm.
it will all, I mean, that's a question for the distie, really.
Got it. Okay.
There's so much variance
Yeah.
between disties and by region and all kinds of things.
Okay. And on your website, you have a list of distributors who
Yes.
sell your, okay,
Hmm.
great.
And also for anybody who may not already have a distributor and who's not signed up as a VAR on for Netgear, again, feel free to email me, and I will make sure to direct you to the right team that can help you out.
Great. Well, haven't had any other questions come in through the Q&A panel. Shaheen, thank you so much for taking us through this. I really enjoyed it. I liked the demo. It looks super easy. It's like it can't be that easy, but it looks like it is. So really appreciate you taking us through that demo part to show everybody what it looks like and just how to go through some basic things and taking a lot of complexity out of it.
Well, thanks, Doug. I really appreciate that. And it's interesting that you should say it makes it super easy, because that's one of the key points that was raised by both Tully and Miercom as one of the key aspects of Insight, is that we take something that is very complex and we try to simplify it. So, so thanks for that comment, and thanks for the opportunity, and thank you to your audience for your time and for their time and their questions and their interest. And I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.